NBC News can now report 3 convoys of what appear to be evacuees were just hit by Israeli strikes in Gaza. That's according to the Palestinian Health Ministry and also some of our own interviews. 70 people are dead. Only an hour. IDF said an extensive attack against military targets within Gaza was underway. This morning, Israel dropped thousands of leaflets in the north of the Strip, warning civilians to go south. Quote, Gaza City has turned into a battlefield. Leave your homes immediately, read those flyers. The IDF told Gaza City residents they would refrain from touching an evacuation route until 8 p.m. That was just about 2 hours ago. Quote, no one knows where we're going, one Gaza resident told NBC News, but we're ready to run. NBC News.
Wow. Well, the war continues here, and here now we have World War III predictions coming up in mass here now from billionaire Ray Dalio. We're going to get started with billionaire Ray Dalio's opinion, hedge fund manager. We'll also, what we just listened to is just a disaster. I want to throw in that the United Nations has commented on this evacuation suggestion, dare I say, order from Israel, suggesting that encouraging almost half of the Gazan population to flee would be calamitous and fraught with problems, especially since if you consider as people are fleeing, there is this potential for Israeli drones and satellites to misperceive, and even warplanes to misperceive fleeing civilians as militants, as Hamas soldiers. And you know what? There's quite a good likelihood you got a convoy of 50. There's probably someone from Hamas on there. So it's unfortunate. It is the collateral damage of war, though, with over 1 million children living in the Gaza Strip out of a 2 million population, 2.1-ish million population, almost 50%. It's absolutely devastating what's going on. What's the World War III prediction now, Mikey? You've got a piece here from Ray Dalio, eh? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, do you want to throw it on the screen or you just want to talk about this?
Yeah, if we can throw it on screen, go for it. Let's do it. So this is Ray Dalio. He's Bridgewater Capital co-founder of Bridgewater Capital, and his book Principles is pretty good. I audiobooked that a long time ago. But so what's his opinion? What's going on here?
Yeah, so basically Ray Dalio is worried that these conflicts in Ukraine and now in Israel, that they're going to start bleeding over. That's his worst fear, is that
into other countries,
and that other countries are going to have to get involved. And kind of summarizing, we're not going to go through the entire thing, but summarizing it, he thinks that if there's an imbalance of power, meaning the United States is not only helping in Ukraine, now it's helping in Israel. If there's another conflict, for example, in a separate country, the United States gets involved there, their resources are spread extremely thin, and that creates an imbalance of power, and the United States isn't as strong as it should be. The other thing that he is really concerned about is not only like these smaller countries getting into conflict, the bigger thing that he's more concerned about is China getting into a conflict, for example, with Taiwan. He didn't explicitly say that. That's just a concern that he has, that if bigger countries get into a war, that's just inviting World War III. Because these smaller countries, it's just conflicts, obviously terrible what's happening, but it's not bringing the world down to its knees necessarily.
Yeah, this is interesting. He's suggesting, quote, in my opinion, this war has a high risk of leading to several other conflicts of different types in a number of places. And I think that's very interesting about the idea of a world war, is that it doesn't necessarily have to be revolving around the same war. It's just many different battles and warring countries all occurring at the same time. He says, and it is likely to have harmful effects that will extend beyond those in Israel and Gaza. Primarily for those reasons, it appears to me that the odds of transitioning from the contained conflicts to a more uncontained hot world war that includes the major powers have now risen from 35% to over 50% over the last 2 years. In other words, let's think about what Ray Dalio was just saying. Billionaire Ray Dalio is suggesting you have Ukraine and now this Palestine-Israel conflict that have created such a hotbed of disaster and military distraction and hate and frustration and mobilizing of militaries and the production of military weaponry, especially new military weaponry. I think I would guess these are some of the first wars we're fighting so much with drones, not like the Obama era drone strikes, but like DJI, drop and grenade kind of drones. It's really it's kind of scary.
If you think about it from a historical perspective, at first I didn't necessarily agree with Ray Dalio, but the more I think about it, the more I can understand where he's coming from. With the thought of the United States being spread really thin, with focusing their resources on Russia, with sending more ammunition or more funds to Israel, so it kind of invites, obviously terrible, but invites a situation like Pearl Harbor, where the United States is caught off guard, where they're so focused on helping other countries that the United States is blindsided by some sort of attack. Obviously, we have no evidence of anything like that happening, but Ray Dalio he kind of says the quiet part out loud. He says the uncomfortable thing out loud.
Well, it's a good point, because I mean, think about this. Nobody was paying attention to this Israel Palestine issue because it's been going on for 60 plus years, more like 80 years, right? So we're almost at 80 years since 1946 that this stuff has been going on. And it's like, oh, the Iron Dome shot down some more rockets. Okay. That it's like, it's so common in Israel that I've spoken to some Israelis. They used to be real estate clients, and they would say they would be.
I didn't get that. Could you try again?
Siri's talking to us. they would say, hey, we would have parties in our backyards, and the Iron Dome would shoot down some rockets that are coming in, and all of a sudden, what do we have? We all take a break. We look up. We see the Iron Dome shoot some rockets down, and then we go right back to party. It was almost like the way of life. It's like, we live in Israel. We live in the Middle East. It's normal to see rockets get shot down with the Iron Dome. And I almost wonder if that gave this false sense of security. Because even the CIA was identifying this potential ramp up of a conflict coming. But instead of Israel preparing for it, everyone seemed complacent.
It's almost like a strategy. It's like, let's make them look up, like you said, and their fences, they have a religious holiday. They just think, oh, it's just another missile hitting the Iron Dome, but let's sneak right through their fences while they're sleeping and having a religious holiday.
Yeah, that's a really good point. But to Ray Dalio's point here, think about it. This Israel-Palestine conflict, which is the worst we've seen in decades, is happening on the heels of Russia invading Ukraine. So initially we're like, Russia's not going to invade Ukraine. That was sort of the mainstream thesis. It's like, well, I mean, you got a whole Russian army on the border there of Ukraine. I think the only thing holding it back was the Chinese Olympics. Please wait until after the Olympics to go kill. It's terrible.
Yeah.
So then you have this Israel-Palestine issue that, again, people weren't expecting would be this severe, and all of a sudden now it's escalating more and more and more. Lebanon Hezbollah via Lebanon is getting involved. There's a risk that potentially other countries get involved. So far, it seems like Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Syria, even though Syria got bombed by Israel, and Egypt are kind of like, okay, can we talk this out? So far, that's still good, but it's problematic because, as you said, it also invites this idea of, what about China, right? I mean, I say it all the time. I'm like, I know China wants Taiwan to be their Hong Kong, an autonomous region or semi-autonomous region that's owned by the CCP, essentially. But, before Israel-Palestine, it's like, no. China's not going to invade Taiwan. But now it's like, I mean, how many times are we going to say, no, it's not going to happen? And then all of a sudden, Russia invades Ukraine again. Israel invades the Gaza Strip after they get attacked. Well, and it's what Ray Dalio is warning, that as everybody is so conflicted, more battles are likely to start.
I wonder if Ray Dalio watches the pod, because this is like almost textbook what I said the other day of like, first of all, would this have happened if there wasn't a Ukraine-Russia war?
That's a good point. You did say that.
And then number two is, do you think China's going to take advantage of that and be like, all right, while the U.S. has their military kind of spread thin, helping Israel, helping Ukraine, let's jump in and start a third one?
And if you're a country that necessarily, instead of having, this is actually pretty interesting, instead of being diplomatic and trying to end the war as quick as possible, if we're the good guys, the United States is going to send us money. They don't want people to die, so we can fight back.
Right.
So instead of being diplomatic, these countries are now motivated to fight back.
Yeah, that's also interesting. So two things to unpackage here. Number one, what you said, Mikey, it's true. And my response was, well, I mean, like, China's economy's in the doldrums. This is probably not the time for that to happen. But then again, look at the lag between the invasion of Ukraine by Russia and this. We're at about 18 months. So does that mean in 18 months, we're potentially, maybe China's economy is stabilized again and it's their turn? I mean, it's what Ray Dalio says, very interesting, of you're creating this hotbed. It's almost kind of like when a house burns down, the concern isn't I mean, once the people are out of it, the concern isn't so much saving everything about that house anymore. It's now about preventing the spread to other properties.
Mhm.
It's about preventing those embers from flying out of a window and going and lighting somebody else's drapes on fire because their window was open and an ember blew in, right? That's almost what Ray Dalio is suggesting here, how you could start getting into a World War III.
Yeah.
And with the backing of, as you said, United States is money printer. I mean, what think about it. What decision-making process is there for Iran, or sorry, for Israel, if we're going to invade the Gaza Strip and they had no backing? They have to ask themselves, okay, how long can we sustain this war ourselves? How long can our economy sustain this war? And how long are we willing to damage our economy spending money on weapons and tanks and whatever to go conduct this incursion? They actually have to run that calculus.
Yeah.
Now, if you have somebody that's like, if you want to invade, we'll pay for it. If you don't want to invade, we won't pay for it. Like whatever that is removed from the calculus.
It's fungibility the other way, because the United States is always like, we'll pay for your defense weapons.
Oh, I mean, that's
but then,
bullshit. Yeah.
But like, okay, hypothetically,
I
if
know what
it
you
is
mean.
only for
Yes.
defense, okay, we'll use that money for defense. We'll use
Exactly. But it's interesting because money and incentives drive decisions. Why does the government give tax credits to people? It's so that they do what the government wants, which is, hey, we give tax credits for EVs and solar. Why? So you can buy those.
Yeah.
So you support startup businesses and EVs and solar, and you get more EVs and solar. The government is literally giving Israel a tax credit for war.
That's true.
Isn't that crazy?
Well put.
That's pretty
That's
crazy.
The
exactly right.
American taxpayer is incentivizing an Israeli invasion.
the thing is, we talked about this the other day as like a hypothetical, like if Mexico's cartel were to sneak through and just do a random attack that was not sponsored by Mexico whatsoever, but it was just an extremist group that attacks the United States. At what point does a country that's already on the verge, already in war, not do something that's going to offend the United States, or puts the United States in position like, are we going to let this slide?
Right.
Or do we need to show that our stick is bigger? Like if we were,
and we would, because the America can eat its cake and what's
Have
the
it
saying?
too.
Have it and eat it, yeah.
They make their cake and have it too, or
Yeah.
whatever, right? Like they can do everything. They can operate all around the world, and
Yeah.
they would. But I like your analogy, because imagine this. Imagine if the Mexican cartel invaded, Texas or California or whatever, and took like 100 hostages, and then China called Biden, said, Biden, we'll pay for you to demolish Mexico. If you don't want to do it, we won't send you any money. But if you do, we'll pay for it. It makes the incentives a little easier, right? It's not our taxpayers.
Do you think the U.S. is only sending money because they're choosing to invade Gaza, or do you think it's because of the Hamas attack?
Well, I mean, of course it's because of the Hamas attack, right? But I mean, and it's the United States has a long history of supporting Israel, because the United States sees Israel as a buffer in the region, right? Because if you don't have Israel, you are able to potentially breed the terrorists to attack America. That's America's POV, right? That's the foreign policy POV that I see. Why have instability in the United States when you could put Israel, essentially that's hated, in the Middle East and let them fight?
it's another proxy.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
The United States is literally just, I hate to say the word pawns, but
Yeah.
they're using Ukraine and Israel as a pawn. Is that a bad analogy? Like
No, it's proxy. It's a proxy.
Proxy,
War. You know,
okay.
it's Israeli fighters fighting a terrorist group.
Using
it's
United States
Ukrainians
money.
fighting exactly. And so it's really it's the American taxpayers' money, really.
Yeah.
But it's weird because, of course, I understand the foreign policy of wanting to minimize terror groups. I mean, now here's a way the United States is basically launching a war on terror, but it's really Israel's war on terror, right?
And
if
if
Israel weren't there, well, who's Hamas going to attack them?
Yeah, you're not
Comes
sending
over here.
troops, so
Yeah.
you can say you're protecting the troops. You don't have to send them out, because the president that
No.
sends troops has to deal with a lot of blowback.
Oh my gosh,
Um,
you don't get reelected. Oh my.
yeah, no,
well, I mean,
that's
Bush did, but
So Ray Dalio talked on something else in this piece that
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting that I think we should talk about. He talks about the opportunity the United States and China have to form somewhat of a peace corps in brokering a deal with Ukraine and Russia. If all four parties sat down the table, the United States and China are on the same side of the table, like say me and Mike here, United States and China, you are Putin and Zelensky's over there. And we're like, you guys, we got to figure this out.
Yeah.
Like, put it to an end. Ray Dalio makes the argument that having the United States and China on the same side of the table would create this sentiment around the world that both countries are on the same team. It's like mom and dad sitting to have a talk with you. You can't say mom said this, dad said this.
You know what you really need? Putin and China on the same team, or Putin and the United States on the same team. Imagine that.
So
because China, one of the reasons China's being like, that's how you get China.
Yeah.
Because one of the reasons China is sitting out and being somewhat neutral, not wanting to comment too much. You know, Putin, by the way, every day, he's like Trump on Twitter right now. Like every day he's like, this is terrible. People's lives are being ruined. And I'm like, it's kind of like, you know, the pot calling the kettle black, you know, a little bit here, actually a lot. But if the United States was able to broker a deal with Russia that ended the Ukrainian war, and then they partnered in solving the problems in Palestine, now you have world peace, almost.
And I think,
I mean,
I think Iran got wise to the exactly what you're saying that United States is trying to do, because like we mentioned before, there was that Saudi Arabia deal that's basically now on ice and it's not going anywhere.
Yes.
And that would have been a good opportunity. Like, hey, China came in, helped a little bit. United States is coming, helping a little bit.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia is leaning more to the west now, and Iran just nipped that right in the bud.
See, that is a really good point. And Saudi Arabia made it clear that, hey, like the deal's not dead. It's just it's on pause right now. Like it's kind of like feels a little weenie, like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, kind of. But I like this what you're saying, because really, who are really the problems? Well, it's probably countries like Iran, but Iran is a big partner with Russia. And so what the U.S. should really do, if we're really worried about Iran and the Middle East, is can we broker and finally finish this Ukraine issue, come up with a solution here, partner with Russia, because they're not going anywhere. It's a massive country with a lot of energy riches. Even if Putin's gone, it's going to be somebody else, and it could be somebody even more extreme. And they're going to want to wave their 3,300, probably 25% functioning nukes around.
That's probably how they're going
do
to
that.
run for election. I don't know how the elections work, but like, I will end the war in Ukraine.
You just appoint Putin forever, basically.
Oh.
Yeah, that's how it works over there. And,
Pretty much,
and then
yeah.
the Duma rubber stamps it. but anyway, I mean, think about that. If the U.S. could actually end the war in Ukraine with Russia, then partner with them to actually focus on a big threat here, which is Iran. Hey, no more drone facilities in Russia. Okay, we'll buy your wheat again. We'll buy your oil again. You could lower oil prices. You can remove inflation, and we can get back to peace. Well, now the target of problems and hostilities narrows down to really just North Korea and Iran, and hopefully by brokering this, you minimize tensions between China and Taiwan.
Yeah.
So here's something interesting. You talked about you want Putin on your side, and I also want to talk about the economic impact of that. One, with Putin being on the side of the United States, I feel like that was something that Trump did extremely well, was keep your friends close, but your enemies closer.
Yeah.
And I think we'll talk about that a little bit more today. But whether or not him and Putin were best friends, or Xi Jinping, or I forget North Korea, what's the
Kim Jong-un.
Kim Jong-un, whether they were best friends with Trump, they at least respected him enough to, like, Trump established a level of respect and was able to have somewhat of a mutual playing field.
Well, it's like having a dialogue, right?
Yeah.
Like if you have a problem and you hate the manager of Costco's guts and you have a problem at Costco, how hard is it for you to go to that manager? And they hate you too. And you guys tweet evil crap at each other every day about how they're a scumbag, and they tweet back, oh no, you're a scumbag. Now you have a problem with Costco and you're like, crap, I need help with my warranty or whatever, right? You walk in, that guy's not going to want to help you. They don't give a crap about you because you're just bitching at each other all the time. Whereas you take the Trumpian approach. I'm not saying it's right, but it's a different perspective. You take the Trumpian approach and you go, hey, you know what? Look, we got to mutually respect each other. We have differences of opinions. Hey, but, like Trump said, Putin's a smart guy. Like he got blasted for that, obviously. But you earn a lot more respect by doing that. And interestingly, it's a 4D chess move, because now you make the person think like, oh, they don't definitely hate my guts, which means you can actually walk into that Costco and negotiate a deal that could end up working out better for you.
Yeah.
If the other person hates you, you can't negotiate anything.
Keep your friends closer and your enemies closer.
Yeah. If the other side hates you, you end up having to do an equal exchange and then throw in another $6 billion.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you going to say, Mikey?
Well, I was just thinking like a hypothetical here. So everything we're discussing is contingent on the fact that Israel's going to invade Gaza, period. Nothing we can do about it.
Right.
But my question is, if they were to take a different approach, I don't know if this is even possible. I'm just thinking out loud here. But if they took a different approach and said, okay, we just scared the crap out of you. You understand where we stand. Palestine, you now, the people of Palestine, have to get rid of Hamas. Otherwise, we are going to follow through. Do you think that is a bargaining chip they could use, or is it?
Yeah, I think that's a
possible?
great idea. I mean, in fact, consider this. You could say, look, we took Gaza City. We told you all to evacuate from Gaza City. We requested 1 million people evacuate. Look how fast we rolled through Hamas. Hamas left a statement saying, we're going to fight back. When we ended their fight back in 2 days, again, blitzkrieg style, right? Well, now you have a massive position of power. And you could say, listen, we're going to do the same thing we just did in Gaza City to the next section. Or let's end this. It's a great point of leverage.
Do you think that also creates a problem of a civil war where there's going to be a good guy and a bad guy of a civil war in the United States? Like, okay, we'll fund the Palestine government. And then it's still like the same story, but in a tighter circle, where if Israel's like, all right, you guys take care of it. Like we showed you our dominance. You guys take care of it or else we will. Does that invite the United States to have to take a side of Palestine versus Hamas instead of Israel versus Hamas?
I think the United States can support both Palestine and Israel at the same time in fighting Hamas. That is totally functional. And that's what you need. You can't have Palestinians governed by Israelis. It will never last.
Yeah.
It will never work. You probably can't have Palestinians governed by Americans either. That didn't work in Afghanistan. You know who could govern Palestinians? Palestinians.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it works.
Mm-hmm.
So, I really think that's a good suggestion. Hopefully, I'm sure that's a consideration of theirs. But hopefully, again, this incursion goes quick. My dream for this weekend, because today's coupon expiration day for the Meet Kevin new Bruce Pro videos, and then I got a massive test on Monday, so I got a lot of work to do this weekend. But while I'm working this weekend and studying and everything, I'll be watching this Israel situation very closely. And my dream is that Gaza City, by the time we come back Monday, is 100% in Israeli control, and the fighting's done. That would be my dream. I think it's a dream because I don't think it's likely.
Yeah,
but that would be fantastic.
So something that I had learned about, something that David Sachs brought to my attention that I didn't necessarily know. I had seen it circulate in the news how vast the Hamas tunnels are.
Oh, yes, 1,300 of them. It's crazy.
Over
so many
300
tunnels.
miles.
Yeah.
So here's the problem: you lose air control because if the problem is hiding underground, you can just try to bomb the tunnels and bomb them until the tunnels are gone.
Right.
But you're kind of guessing.
That's why they're
hit or
collapsing
miss.
buildings.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
that's where you come up.
By Israel going air to buildings, you have a lot more cross casualties involving citizens. You're not actually getting rid of the problem.
Hence the leaflets and other
which is going to force a ground incursion, like you said, Blitzkrieg.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're getting over, like you're in, like it almost seems like a trap to me, Kevin. Like they're inviting Israel to come. You don't think they have ground mines placed for their tanks? You don't think they have people ready to ambush?
Well,
like it's going to be a messy battle. You run through the tunnels. They can't find the tunnels. You have bombs. You have traps. It almost seems like they're inviting them for a massive conflict that obviously dream case scenarios that one, they don't have to invade. But two, I don't know if this will last 2 days. If you can hide in 1,300 tunnels and you can't use your air because you're going to hit civilians.
Yep.
It seems like a trap.
Well, look, there's no doubt there are traps as Israel's going in. They're waiting. That's what I said the other day. They're sitting in the windows waiting for the rocket to shoot the rockets at the tanks. The Israelis know this. They have anti-tank clearing vehicles or anti-mine vehicles to clear these. Of course, it's war. You know, that not every Israeli who is part of this incursion is going to survive. There are going to be a lot of Israeli casualties as well. That's why they're already building Israeli field hospitals. So it could be either. It depends on how many buildings are left. See, here's the crazy thing. If every building is demolished, it makes the rebuilding substantially harder, especially in an impoverished area already. But you go down a block and it's all rubble. Not a lot of places to hide anymore. Also, not a lot of tunnel accesses to be able to come up.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. If you collapse all of it, let's go extreme for a moment. Let's say you blow up from airstrikes every single building in Gaza City. Every single one. Where do you shoot your rockets from? Behind a pile of rubble. That's all you got. Okay, well, but that could be seen with the drone.
No elevation, yeah.
So you're screwed. And now you're outside. What protection do you have? You just have rubble. It's tough. I mean, yeah, you could put one person maybe hiding under some rubble or something, but it gets a lot more difficult. But if you also have, well, let's just say, again, it's just an extreme example, 100% of all buildings are gone. Well, now any building or any tunnels that would come out or in from tunnels, you're trapped.
Yeah.
So really, there's in that kind of example, you're not even caring about the tunnels. You just pummel everything. Flatten everything. You go in. We're in control now.
Hey, Ken, will you throw this on the screen? And we have Christian has the day off today, so we've got Ken doing the video stuff. But what I've got pulled up over here is a map. This is as of 2021, but this is kind of the map of the mines, or not the mines, the tunnels. Yes, exactly.
Yep.
So this is over 300 miles of tunnel system. And one thing that I noticed off the bat is on this side of the border, on the Egyptian side, they don't have tunnels all the way up to the border. And I found out they used to, and Egypt flooded them and destroyed them. And this was years ago.
Yep.
So we've got obviously the tunnels to the right over here, and then you could tell this is where like the most population density is. I mean, Gaza City is by far the most dense over here. Which this is what's crazy is how do you get over a million, almost 1.1 million people down on such short notice to evacuate?
And this is not like Florida evacuating during a hurricane, where everybody has a car, you have functional highways. This is where roads have been destroyed and bombed. There are bodies everywhere. There's not even power. You're probably starving. You don't
saw
even
what they said in
the
video. They don't know where to go. They're just leaving.
Of course not, because even if you go down south, what are you going to walk into a convenience store with nothing and just start eating? Like, it doesn't work that way.
And to show this too, I want to show, this is a really good NBC piece right here that shows the population density of Gaza, which is something that a lot of people don't really consider.
It's Gaza, man.
Yeah, so Gaza, obviously,
Gaza City.
this right here.
Yeah.
And then it's going to compare it to, there's Philadelphia, which is similar in size. It's Gaza Strip has about 30% more population. The numbers that you're seeing here, this is actually just Gaza City alone.
Yes.
And then the Philadelphia, the main part of Philadelphia.
But they want that whole northern section to be
All of this
evacuated, not just Gaza City.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so many people.
And then here's just showing population density. We're dealing with a density the size of London or Tel Aviv as far as how many people are living per square mile.
Yeah.
So this is, I mean, the UN is calling this impossible. And I would say I agree with them. There's no way you can evacuate 1 million people to the south. On top of that, even if they get to the south, then what do? There's no resources. There's no extra homes or buildings or water or food. You're still screwed in the south.
Yeah, you're definitely still screwed. And the fact is, it's almost impossible for aid to get in there. It's not like the Red Cross can just roll in through Egypt. Like
it's a war zone.
It's a war zone. Well, not only that, but like, I mean, me, if I were a Palestinian, I'd be like, okay, get me out of here. I'm just gonna start walking if I needed to. If I didn't have a car or whatever, I just start walking. The problem with that is like, okay, well, at some point you're gonna need food, water, and just to be able to survive. But it's better than almost certain death of staying up north.
For sure.
It's a good map. Yeah, we can take that down. So back to Ray Dalio, I think. I also want to finish two things. One, let's finish that 100% demolish example. They're not going to demolish 100%. So let's say they demolish 40%. You're right. They still have 60% of buildings that you're going to have battles in and fights in. The question now is, can 300,000 to 600,000 Israeli troops take on 10,000 bunkered down Hamas fighters?
It's going to be ugly. It turns into guerrilla warfare.
Yeah, it is. But Israel will win, probably.
They will win, but at a great cost.
I agree.
Yeah.
To what extent? Yeah. How many casualties for them to do that? I agree.
Yeah, exactly. So that, and then the question becomes, there's going to be a lot of life lost, civilians, military folks. Does that lead to a 50% chance of World War III? Do you guys think we're looking at more hotbeds? Like, when are we actually going to see calmer heads prevail? Because maybe Ray Dalio is right. And if we're at a 50% chance of World War III, I can't help but think it. Ray Dalio, he always wants the debt bubble to reset, and most people do. Every time he talks, it's all about how we're in the 9th inning and the debt bubble's about to explode. One day he will be right. But my concern is he's going to be saying this for 200 years. Even after he's dead, he's going to have like recordings and tweets that like are scheduled out. Every freaking Christmas, we're going to get, did the debt bubble explode yet? If not, it's about to, talking to you from the grave here. Eventually that will be right. But I don't know that's now. I mean, obviously nobody does. But I am concerned about the potential for more hostility with China after this. I do agree with his one part that you create a hotbed of war here.
Yeah, I don't think World War III will happen unless two major countries, like these smaller countries, going after each other. That's one thing. I don't think we'll see a global war unless the United States is directly attacked, because that's a war on NATO.
It's so weird because, I mean, it's such a loophole because come on, we are like clearly fighting like both of these.
It's
with
complete
money.
proxy war.
yeah.
China would have to invade Taiwan. It's going to come down to something with China and the United States.
Yeah, there's a strong Bloomberg piece today talking about how if this expands to more than just this regional conflict, we're almost guaranteeing a serious recession. That's a problem.
So economically, we talked about the dream outcome of like, hey, let's sit down and broker a deal. Everybody's best friends. We'll bring oil down. I hate to ask this question, but isn't war profitable?
Well, no, not really. So of course, that's the thought. The thought is, well, if we take $10 million and spend it on bombs, we're still spending $10 million, and that's spending, right? That's GDP.
Right, GDP goes up for sure.
That's the theory, but the response to destructive spending is, from an economic point of view, is that money could have been used on something productive and not destructive. And so therefore, you could have taken that productivity and you would have had a greater multiplier effect because there are more people who can benefit from that productivity. If you now go kill a bunch of people and destroy a bunch of buildings, and then now you have to go rebuild them, you're not actually getting a net positive.
Yep.
I mean, look, if your house burns down, oh, yay, a GDP, now we have to rebuild that house. You already had a house. You could have been productive with that house. So you could do a lot more with what you already have. So destructive spending is generally not most ideal. Think about hurricanes or earthquakes, natural disasters, tsunamis. They're not good for an economy. Yes, it's spending because you have to spend, but it's not the spending you want to do. I'd rather they send stimulus checks to everyone in America again. Let's do what California did. Send the inflation relief stimulus checks, because obviously that's not going to contribute to inflation. Idiot. Gavin Newsom. Then spending on destructive. Yeah.
Someone in the comments said broken window fallacy, and that's exactly it. If you went down the street and smashed every window of every car, well, all those people are going to go pay $100 to SafeLight or whatever local business and fix it. And that's spending, that's GDP.
Yeah, and SafeLight will be very happy.
And what's the end result? Back where we started from before we smashed the glass.
Right, no productivity. So think about it. That's actually a great analogy. Let's say, just to make the argument simple, it took $1,000 to fix what somebody damaged because they threw so many rocks at your windows. There are 10 people who had to spend $1,000 just fixing their glass because they don't want to get broken into, or they don't want broken glass, whatever. Well, they could have taken that $1,000 and invested in a new computer that would have let them get a real estate license or whatever and get ahead, rather than just trying to get back to par. So yeah, that's a really good analogy. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Funny enough, Russia's response to this is not what I expected. This is per Al Jazeera, but they were, for one, they condemned all attacks on innocent civilians, both directions. They condemned terrorism, but they were actually calling for a return of the hostages, which I don't know. I just didn't expect that to be Russia's stance.
Wow. Russia doesn't have any hostages right now, do they? They have POW, but like they're not.
I mean, theoretically, that's the same thing.
Hostages are, I would consider hostages civilians. POW is you signed up to fight a war.
That's fair.
They're bartering. Okay. They're bartering chips.
I mean,
not hostage, not innocent. Like
I guess that's a fair difference. Maybe. Okay. So either way, let's think about that for a moment. We've got. It's almost like there's a point of what Putin's doing. I was speculating about this morning a little bit. Is Putin trying to appear like a good guy? How could you say those words right after what's going on? It's hard to say, but I'd like to just. I'm not so worried about what people think about me. I try to think aloud about this perspective and trying to think about all these different edge case scenarios or whatever. And one of the things that I think about is if Putin is trying to appear like a good guy in this, hey, release the hostages. And what would be great if he actually started doing some good shit. Like, hey, you know what? We're sending aid to Israel, right?
Crazy.
Right? To the border of the Gaza Strip. Russia's coming in to help rebuild. Like, holy shit, right? All of a sudden now the impression is, maybe this Putin guy isn't that bad after all. We're kind of pissed off at funding this war anyway. More pressure grows on Congress to maybe work with Ukraine, and let's figure this out. Let's
Moscow
negotiate.
Is a propaganda machine, so I think you're right on the money with that.
They're very good at propaganda, and with the exception of the hand grenade pins and everything.
Yes.
That was just ridiculous.
That
okay,
was tough.
The suggesting that Prigozhin and his plane blew up because he was using cocaine and he accidentally pulled his hand grenade is a good scratch.
I don't think Putin wants to look like a bad guy.
Well, of course, because he needs the other thing to remember too is he needs the support of his people, because think about how many Russian military-aged men are getting drafted, taken away from their family, and families know they're going to die. This is a terrible, bloody, terrible war in Ukraine, and so people around are just disappearing. People are afraid of being drafted in Russia. And then if they find out you're evading this draft, you go to prison and then you get sent to war anyway. It's horrible. So I think Putin, in one regard, needs to manipulate his population to make him seem like, look, I'm a good guy. That's why he's doing this. And the second is it's going to help him with negotiations. And quite frankly, I'm all for both sides getting this done.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. No. But anyway, okay. What's next?
Well, touch up on this a little bit more. Player 3 has entered the game because Hezbollah and Israel have been at it. So this is, if you want to throw this on the screen, Ken, this is, well, I can't really read Arabic, but I'll scroll down for the English translation here in a second. I do have it up on the screen. Basically, the message that they sent is they attacked these 4 Israeli sites at the bottom here, and they basically took full responsibility for it. And the sad news is, so Israel did retaliate. They sent fire back. And unfortunately, they attacked a bunch of journalists, and a Reuters videographer was killed in the attack.
It's terrible. Yeah, it's terrible. And there's going to be so many people there's so many more people that die in this. The question now is, what does Lebanon do? Like, is Lebanon like, yeah, fight this war on our borders, go whatever, Hezbollah? Like I'm thinking to myself, imagine we had I don't know, we'll call them, Terrorist Lives Matter, okay? TLM, all right? Imagine TLM, decides they're going to go to the border of Mexico in America and start launching attacks on Mexico. So TLM's attacking Mexico, right? Is America just like, whatever, you're not attacking us? Like, it's in Lebanon that this is happening. So by Lebanon not doing anything, almost endorses Hezbollah attacking Israel. So I wonder, does this mean the Lebanese government is in support of attacking Israel? And then does the Lebanese government support this war even more?
The problem is Israel going to get blindsided and third-partied?
Well, I mean, they already are. They already are.
Like,
but they already know this. That's why Iran's sending weapons to Syria. So Israel strikes Aleppo and Damascus. Israel's not dumb. Okay, they know they're surrounded, with the exception of the ocean, which the United States parked an aircraft carrier in, and Israel's like, all right, thank God, now we can only have to worry about 3 sides,
Yeah.
But it sucks. But they can fight from all 3 sides. I bet you the border of both the Golan Heights and the West Bank is mega secured right now, because the last thing you want is a breach through that border into Israel. And now you have that 3-pronged attack going on. But my question is, does Lebanon potentially get involved in this fighting war?
Yeah, that's just a good question. I don't know. There has been, I think yesterday I mentioned that, nothing's been going on in the West Bank. It's been relatively peaceful, but as of today, that's not the case either. Police have gotten involved. There's been shooting back and forth. In Jerusalem specifically, there's been a lot of gunfire today too. So West Bank's not as safe of a haven as I thought it would be.
Is this protesting, did you say?
Well, it started off as protests, but I mean, the problem with Palestine and Israel is like every protest tends to kind of go beyond that. If you look at the first Intifada in '87, which is the first Palestinian uprising, that started as a protest because it was a IDF that came and crashed into a car of civilians and killed them. And so that started protests from Palestine because, hey, you guys did this on purpose as a retaliation for when we killed an IDF soldier the other week. And again, this is back in '87. And that evolved into like a whole full-fledged conflict. And then the second Intifada, because that was after the Camp David, the one that failed. And it was the same thing. It started in a protest and eventually it developed in a like full-scale battle. So these things kind of go out of hand. It's not like the peaceful protests that we imagine here in the States.
Yeah, you're right, because even France has now banned Palestinian protests, and France has a real problem with protests. I mean, I'm a big fan of free speech. I mean, everybody knows that. I ran for that when I ran for governor, but yeah, it's when protests turn into looting and violence and stealing and killing, then it becomes a problem. And you're right. It's almost kind of like that's a microcosm of what's happening in Israel and Gaza. You're talking about this hot war issue where all these smaller conflicts can potentially lead to a world war. Well, is that also potentially what protests are in France or in other parts of Israel, where the more of these protests you kind of let go unchecked, the more likely they are to result in killing and slaying and looting and whatever.
It's just what
or war, like you said, Mikey.
what's the difference and what's the consequences of a civil war versus a country A versus country B war?
But what's the civil war? I mean, the Jews are united.
I'm saying in France, the French protests, the French protests, like having something like that. It's a violent form of freedom of speech. It's somewhat of a civil war of sorts. I mean, we see some extreme videos of what happens in France. I don't know if those civil wars will necessarily bleed over into other countries because the problem's not with other countries.
I guess I wouldn't necessarily call them. I don't know. I guess it depends. What's the definition of a civil war? When I think of civil war,
I think internal.
Like half the country versus the other. Not like, well, here's 1% of the population that's pissy, right? That's potentially a little different than a civil war. It's more like it's a problem. It's something you have to deal with. Like there's a group that's upset, right? Anyway, so as far as Jerusalem and these protests, you're right. I mean, if that's how these things started, then it does make you wonder, can it expand? I mean, I see what you're saying too. Maybe not.
Ken, you want to throw this on the screen too, just while we're talking, showing you some of the protests happening around the world right now. They're all pro-Palestinian protests, but I definitely think that at least what I've been seeing on media, it seems like much of the world is in solidarity with Palestine, and I don't necessarily disagree to be, with solidarity with the Palestinian people. I mean, it's horrible. Like you said, 50% of them are children, and it's just that kind of the separating the Hamas, the entity that is in control of Palestine right now, from the people, in the same way that like you can respect Israel's rights to defend themselves without necessarily having to support Netanyahu. I can't say his name right now. And the Zionist party. So,
well, here it's really interesting what's happening. I don't know who the perpetrator would be, if it'd be Hamas, but it's making it seem obviously Palestine is the person being attacked, the country that's being attacked, but they're almost turning Israel into the bad guy, to where like a lot of people, as you can see in these videos, are supporting Palestine because they know Israel's coming to attack. The sentiment for protecting Israel is, over the last few days, has gone to be less and less. And
that's going to extend anytime you have a continued conflict. What's interesting about that, I think you could use another analogy to help with that, is consider this. When a woman punches a guy, often it's like, all right, what'd you do? Why were you a douche? You're right. A guy punches a woman, that's domestic violence. You're going to jail, right? So I wonder if, and I'm not saying there can't be domestic violence, obviously, from a woman to a man. I'm just saying, this is a very powerful aggressor. Now they are aggressing Palestine. This is obvious. Okay, they obviously were attacked first. I'm not making a judgment on that. I'm just saying Israel is now turned into the aggressor. Hamas has now turned into the defender. The tables have turned. It's called a counterattack. And so usually the aggressor does lose popularity.
Yes, that's true. And it's not only a retaliation, but it is an escalation.
Oh, 100%. Oh my gosh, this is like a 100x escalation.
Do we hold that same regard to Ukraine when they attack Moscow with drones? Is it like, all right, Ukraine, come on?
Well, I mean, that's like,
is that the same story, or is that different?
No, because that's like it's a good analogy, but or comparison. What that is a strong, like having an offense helps the defense that you have. Like at least you need some kind of offense, but Ukraine's not an aggressor here. They can't be, because they're still trying to get Russia off of their own land. So not yet. It could turn. If Russia, if Ukraine took all of their land back, and then they were sending drones in.
It would be insane to me. Obviously, I don't think this will ever happen. But if you're able to go to Ukraine now, because in my mind, when I think of Ukraine, I think of an entire country just at war and in rubble. But I don't think that that's the reality.
Where?
In Ukraine. Like if you go to Ukraine,
it's Dnipro and Donetsk right now.
Exactly. Most of the country seems to be normal. I
mean, obviously you're going to have political instability or emergency government services, access to deliveries. You're not able to operate. You're certainly not able to operate under normal circumstances. It's still war. But yeah, I mean, like, sure, if you go to the eastern part of Ukraine, could you probably go to a bar and like go to a nightclub and like have a good time? Of course, like definitely. Whereas
the western part,
correct? Yeah, sorry, thank you for that. So now the question though is, or the comparison is that's not happening in Palestine. Well, at least not in Gaza Strip. Maybe in the West Bank you are, right? The West Bank that you could be having your bars and nightclubs still, but not Gaza Strip. That's sad. That's terrible.
That's gonna be demolished.
All right, what's next?
All right. Well, we mentioned the Trump calling Putin very smart, and I actually wanted to get into that a little bit. We can have a quick little U.S. politics segment. I'm gonna open up this YouTube video.
People get so mad at Donald Trump saying that certain people are smart because they think that if you call someone smart, it means you agree with them. Calling someone smart is just a way of suggesting that they make decisions that are good for themselves. You could be like, hey, the way that battle was fought was smart, but you could hate the person's guts and totally disagree with what they're doing.
Somebody left an interesting comment here. They say, how is this an escalation? They literally slaughtered everybody at a concert nearby. And you remember when we did that to 9/11, this is 9/11 to them, no mercy, because the United States declared a war on terror and went to Afghanistan and Iraq. And so did the United States escalate that? Or are they trying to stomp out the problem?
100%. An escalation is anytime you make a problem even larger, right? And so consider, and I'm not suggesting that what Israel is doing is wrong. I get it. It was a slaughter. It was terrible what Hamas did. But let's just make a hypothetical example here. Let's say the options are Hamas attacks, and then the military comes to that portion of Israel. Hamas is removed from that portion of Israel. Israel builds the wall twice as big and says, now we're stripping your funding. And they take a diplomatic approach, which, again, is obviously not what they're doing here. But they take the approach of Palestine, you have to pay for this. You're going to pay for our wall. We're basically going to enslave you with sanctions. The U.S. is going to join us on sanctions. You need to make sure for the next 10 years, our country is repaid for the lives we just lost. The 1,000 Israelis that were just killed, you're going to repay for it with money and support over the next 10 years. That is an option, right? I'm not here to say that's the right option, but that is an option. That would be a de-escalative option.
That's also a logical response, whereas this is right now they're doing an emotional response. And I'm not saying it's right, but this has been conflict that's been going on for over 70 years. Everyone's hot. There's religion involved here too. I think they're being, I don't want to say reckless, but definitely emotion before logic right now.
Oh yeah, and rightfully so. There's a lot of emotion especially people who have lost loved ones. Of course, right? That's normal. But yeah, I mean, so those are sort of the plate of options, right? You have one option, which is basically 100% diplomatic. And then you have, we are going to nuclear bomb, essentially, the entire Gaza Strip. Like, imagine you could just build, like, 100-foot wall all the way around it and then just drop a nuke from the top, right? That's the other extreme, is you literally just flatten everything. And so the decision that has to be made is, well, one is de-escalating. Like, the attack puts you maybe in the middle. Then you can go in the de-escalation direction, or you can go in the escalation direction. Whether or not it's rational, emotional, rash, calculated, no matter what it is, the question that somebody said in the comments is this a de-escalation or an escalation? And by the definition of what an escalation is, this is an escalation.
Yeah. And if you are Zelensky, or if you are, I don't know if it's the king or whoever is running Israel, if you're one of the people in charge, the people are, like you said, are super emotional right now. You would be the first person dead in the room, say, no, guys, we're not going to attack. I know our women and children were killed, but we're not going to attack. Like, we're not going to respond. The people are going to kill you, because does that make sense what I'm saying? To go against the grain of the people, if you're running those countries,
well, that's the point.
Would be the most unpopular.
Of course, and that's the point of being a politician. Is your goal is to represent the will of the people, and if this is the will of the people, then it's an escalation.
Interesting.
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
Right.
Next,
Trump.
So yeah, let's do the Trump video over here. And I do agree with you that, like, you can call someone smart for what they're doing without necessarily liking the person.
Right.
It is a little bit sussy though. He doesn't call his political opposition, the Democrats, smart, right? Those guys are all idiots, but Putin is smart, Kim Jong-un is smart, Xi Jinping, he's smart. So anyway, let's watch Trump's take on this here.
And then 2 nights ago, I read all of Biden's security people. Can you imagine? National defense people. And they said, gee, I hope Hezbollah doesn't attack from the north, because that's the most vulnerable spot. I said, wait a minute. Hezbollah is very smart. They're all very smart. The press doesn't like when they say it. I said that President Xi of and the first man They killed me the next day. I said he was smart. What am I going to say? But Hezbollah, they're very smart. And they have a national defense minister or somebody saying, I hope Hezbollah doesn't attack us from the north. So the following morning, they attacked. They might not have been doing it, but if you listen to this jerk, you would attack from the north because he said that's our weak spot. Whoever heard of officials saying on television that they hope the enemy doesn't attack in a certain area? Now, unless it's a con job. But you know what a con job is? You're waiting there ready. You want them if you want them, but they weren't ready. They weren't ready. You know, say what you want. Israel was not ready. This was a big surprise. This was a terrible thing that happened. They weren't ready. But if you wanted them to attack because you've got 1 million people there with guns and you're going to blast the hell, then you do exactly. But they didn't have that. They didn't have that. Biden's national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, even bragged just days before the attack that the Middle East seems to be quite quiet. That was good. They really, honestly, what they've done, it's a shame. You look at the world with all of the problems in this world. We can
cut it there.
Wow.
He goes on for too long. But
Trump is playing 4D chess. This is such a high level chess move. He is trying to win an election at the same time as a geopolitical campaign at still calling his enemies smart because he's not calling the Democrats smart because he does not care about them. He wants to keep his Republicans tight and his enemies just as close so that when he gets back into office, he has the support of the world, not just the Republicans.
Yeah.
So like there's no more Russia interference. Like they want Trump and like Trump is their friend. Like he is making the case of these people are smart. Like let's work with them. Like they're not doing it right. He's pointing at Biden saying, look at this. They're doing this wrong, and this wrong. Like, I would not have done this. And he gives like logical point of view. Like you wouldn't say, don't attack me here. You wouldn't say that at all unless you're ready to respond.
It's really creating this perfect contrast that Trump is trying to do, whether people agree or not. That's obviously their own opinion. But exactly what you're saying. If you're like, hey, even the terrorists are smart. The Dems, on the other hand,
Biden's
my
security
God.
advisor doesn't stand a chance. Like Hezbollah is smarter than Biden's security advisor.
The contrast is funny. You know, he is a marketing genius because he knows, because he referenced it himself. He knows he's going to get torn to shreds for calling him smart. Everybody's going to be talking about Trump the next day.
Yeah.
His poll numbers then go up because it's like, then people look at the context and then they start listening to the rest of his story. You know, you go play the clip. It's like, when do we stop? Because it's entertaining. And what's interesting is like, I don't think he sits there and writes his speeches all day long and scripts them out. He's just got, I feel like he's got maybe a 10-minute speech. And it's just like a list of like little catchphrases that he has to say. And then they'll turn it into 2 hours just by talking about each side. Then Hillary's emails. Where do I start with Hillary's emails? Anyway.
Yeah, no, what he's doing is insane. It's
just
very
as entertaining as it is annoying. But anyway. I do have a couple responses. White House Deputy Press Secretary Andrew Bates said, and I quote, "Statements like this are dangerous and unhinged. It's completely lost on us why any American would ever praise an Iran-backed terrorist organization as smart," although we obviously just discussed why somebody would. And then the only other one I have, Ken, if you could throw this on the screen. This is from Ron DeSantis on X, and he says,
"Who's that?
I don't know, never heard of him." Not as good of a marketer as Trump, clearly.
No.
Terrorists have murdered at least 1,200 Israelis and 22 Americans and are holding more hostage, so it's absurd that anyone, much less someone running for president, would choose now to attack our friend and ally Israel, much less praise Hezbollah terrorists as very smart. As president, I will stand with Israel and treat terrorists like the scum that they are. Is this guy running for president?
I think he might be.
Huh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's to kind of the way that I see this is, so I played football for a long time. Okay. I played a position that would get hit. I played quarterback where you'd get hit by the big, strong dudes that wanted to come attack you. And when they come attack you, if you got up and said, "Man, that was a nice hit, dude. Like you're a good player," then you'd start to get in their head that they don't want to hurt somebody that's being nice to them. And that'd give him a little of an incentive, like, "Hey, I'm not going to hit him as hard after the whistle blows. Or I'm going to let off just a little bit. Like he's being nice to me. Like I don't want to hurt him. I'm just trying to play the game." Like, but it's, if I get up and be like, "Hey, man, like good job. Like you're a heck of a player. Like good play. Let's keep going." Then it's like, "Oh, like we're just playing a game. Like I don't want to hurt my friend." But if you're Trump, you're like, "I will." Hezbollah's the dumbest people I've ever seen. Then Hezbollah's like, "All right, when he gets in office, we're gonna make his life miserable."
I'm gonna have to disagree with
Let's do
that
it.
because the way I see it,
Fight.
And I don't know so I don't know as much about Hezbollah as I do about Hamas, but I don't think Hamas would treat an ally with any respect because they're using their own people as meat shields and hiding behind them, and they don't have any regard for their own lives. So when you're dealing with terrorists and you're dealing with like religious extremists of any kind, I think any sort of logic goes out the door. It's just as much destruction as possible.
But that's a good point. It's sort of like with Iran. It's like I think Biden was trying to play the logic game of like, oh, if we give them their $6 billion back, maybe they'll be nice to us and they won't manufacture nukes to end up destroying us. Yet you have the Ayatollah of Iran, who very clearly says Americans are greedy, we hate the American way of life, and you basically want to kill Americans. That's how do you like, I see your point.
Yeah.
It's great psychology, and it works, I think, in many regards. I actually think that psychology works with Putin and Xi Jinping. You're right. I don't think it works with people who are committed to their, how many virgins?
72.
72. That much. Yeah.
I don't think those virgins are coming, but okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's enough politics. You want to get in a little bit of market and business?
Yeah, quickly, polls. So just the Friday the 13th polls here. Iowa, Trump v. Biden. Trump wins 10 points. Emerson poll, West Virginia. Trump beats by 36 points. Indiana, Trump beats by 19 points. Nebraska, Trump wins by 16 points. There's no Biden. Oh, wait, here's a Biden win. What's this one? Here's a general election by Fox News. Biden has a 1-point lead in a Fox News poll. Trump has Trump 59 versus 13 for the second place for Republican National Conference from Fox here. It's actually interesting. They have Biden beating Trump as of yesterday at Fox.
Yeah.
They don't like Trump. They don't like
that's
Trump
true.
anymore. Yeah, he is kind of like trying to spite him, by going on the Tucker show and I don't think Trump likes Fox very much either. But that's interesting to me. CNN shows Republican nomination. Obviously, Trump just beats all of these. Trying to look at a couple more of these polls. We got a Michigan from Wednesday, Trump winning. Let's see if I can get some more Trump versus Biden ones. Mostly because I think those are the very interesting sort of the national polls, right? So if we go, if I could get general election Trump versus Biden by the Messenger Harris, we have Trump winning by 4. That was a poll from Tuesday. Morning Consult shows Trump v. Biden winning by 1. This is pretty 50-50 right now in the general election. And this is all, well, I can't say this is after the Israeli conflict, because even though the polls were released Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday that I just read, the surveys could have been from a few weeks ago. So I'm curious to see if we go from this sort of 50-50 general election split to maybe in 2 weeks from now, after the Israeli conflict really takes a hold and people, have their thoughts about Iran or otherwise.
There's something playing in the background.
Yeah, I'm hearing it too.
I think either the TV or Mikey's computer might be.
If you want to mute them both just in case. Real quick, I see a comment here from Omar. Is this live? No, Omar, this is pre-recorded. I just knew you were about to say that.
That's awesome.
Okay. Quick market news.
Is it the roll-in? Is the TV tape on the roll-in that's muted? Okay. All right.
Well,
so maybe it's like a device, like one of us
close to the mic. Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere around. But I don't. Nobody's been complaining about it, so I'm just gonna put everything on mute.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway.
We'll end this really, really quickly because it's the weekend. No one really wants to talk about the market right now. But so
especially after today.
Yeah. The reason I want to bring it up is a lot of banks reported today. We had Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, Citigroup, even BlackRock reported today. And stocks are mixed. Like I saw S&P was down, but I saw Dow Jones was up, and I saw the Nasdaq had even a stronger hit down. I think they were over 1% down.
Yeah.
Nasdaq.
133.
I think they ended at 10 bips up.
Nasdaq no,
was
man.
down. Dow was up a little bit.
Nasdaq down 1.23, S&P down 50 basis points, Dow was up 12 basis points. What's so weird is oil ran like 5.8%. And you'd think with the stock market being down like this, treasury bonds would have gone up, because this morning we got inflation expectations and they're horrible. Everything skyrocketed. Yet 10-year treasury down 9.4 basis points. What the is going on? That's just what my next video title is.
That was going to be the question I was about to ask you. Is kind of what the fuck's going on, but you already answered that.
Nasdaq Inc. is up.
Oh,
the Nasdaq is down. That's where the confusion was. I was like, I swear I saw it up.
JP Morgan beat expectations. Stock went up 1.5%. Wells Fargo. These banks, Wells Fargo included, they're making a lot of money from the interest rates right now.
Oh my God.
61% more earnings year over year compared to Q3 of last year.
It's because of there's this thing called repricing risk at the banks, where basically the savers are making nothing on their cash deposits. There are still savers today who don't realize they could be earning 4 to 5%. And so then they move the money into, a JPM money market fund or whatever. And now JP Morgan doesn't get the spread, because what JP Morgan's doing with the cash you have sitting in your bank is they're putting it into their own money market fund. So they're borrowing your cash and putting it into a money market fund. Now they're getting 5% and you're getting basically zero. As soon as you wake up and realize that you can put your money in a money market fund or, like a high yield checking account or whatever, now they lose that income of that spread.
I love me my Wealthfront, man.
Yeah.
Ooh, Wealthfront's pretty good.
What
I'm
were
a
you telling
fan.
me about JPM's earnings call this morning? You said that you really liked something about it.
Well, so, basically, I read earnings calls every single morning with our course members. And
Wait, what's happening on Friday with course members?
yeah, that's today. There's a coupon expiration, big one. Prices for even the profit portal are going up. All of the different things. We're going to have a price increase tonight at 11:59 p.m. So make sure to email staff at me, Kevin, if you want to bundle up. But check out the profit portals. They're or the individual crash courses. They're all brand new content. They're in production. They're fantastic. $89. They're probably going to be valued at about $1.99. So in a $199, call it $1.99 with all the inflation. Anyway,
Oof.
so $199 is probably where they'll end up. Maybe even $250, somewhere in that range for each of the crash courses. So you get them now for around $89 before the price goes up, and you're locking in a pretty good deal. So check them out. Go to meetkevin.com to see all of those. But anyway, this morning in the JPM call, we're looking at it, and I like to see, okay, are they leaning towards recession or not? And they're 50-50. They're like, whether there's a recession or not, like we're not really sure, but we're not really seeing anything that would point to recession right now. We're seeing consumers continuing to spend down their excess reserves, normalization of defaults. Yeah, a little bit more stress in the lower income and offices, but this is the same crap we've heard for a year. At the same time, everybody's like, recession's coming, the yield curve. But if somebody's going to see a recession coming, you'd think, unless it's going to be something sudden that just breaks, you think the banks would give us some kind of heads up. But then again, the banks were totally blindsided themselves during a banking crisis that we just had. Of course, that just ended up making JP Morgan richer. They just took a load of profit on First Republic on their acquisition. They got some good money at that First Republic branch.
So all these banks reported doing well, beating expectations, but Citigroup still ended down today's negative 0.22%. Why would that be the case?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I saw they I'll find out right now. I saw they laid off 2,000 folks. So I wonder if they must have missed on like operating or their forecast or something. It's possible, because for them to lay off when none of the other banks are laying off, I think they're trying to signal to their investors, don't worry, guys, we're trying to solve it. They're trying to, solve whatever problem there was. Let's find out. Citi sets aside severance for 2,000 individuals being fired. Headcount will come down as divestitures are being completed. Let's see here. That's from the earnings call. These are just some headlines I'm seeing here on the tape, which just kind of gives you little bullet points. Actively working on mitigating the impacts of Basel III and credit rules. Is basically how much money they need to have in reserve of cash. Expects to see continued leverage finance activity. This would be basically very small companies or high risk companies continue to take on debts. Nothing glaring here. Let's see here. Buybacks, modest buybacks in Q4. Maybe people were expecting more. Normalization of credit losses and credit cards. That's what JPM said as well. No very clear disaster over at Citi. And Citi, by the way, appeals to a lower credit cohort than JP Morgan does. It's a lot easier to get a Citi card than it is to get a JP Morgan card or just a Chase card. Like Chase cards are some of the hardest to get. They have much higher credit standards and length of credit history standards as well. Investment banking revenue killed it, 844 versus 662. You had a miss on trading, but so did JPM. That's not a big deal. That's almost to be expected. OpEx came in actually lower than expected. I don't know. None of this actually seems that miserable.
I couldn't figure it out either.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I can go through and read the earnings call. Not something we could do now, but very interesting.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's end it on one last really quick fun one. Your favorite video game, the makers of them, Blizzard Activision,
Oof.
acquired by Microsoft.
Ooh, tell me the number.
69 billion.
Oh,
One of the biggest tech deals of all time, $69 billion. This has been, they've been trying to do this all year. And the only blocker they had of the entire world was CMA, which is the Competition and Markets Authority, which is basically a UK antitrust group. And that was the last obstacle they had. they have to make some concessions, you know, making sure that like it's not, you don't need just an Xbox or a PC to play. So Ubisoft, which is a publisher, they ended up getting perpetual cloud streaming rights for Blizzard games, all Blizzard games made so far, and any games made in the next 15 years to kind of keep the level playing field. But yeah, I thought you might be interested in that news.
Yeah,
World of Warcraft is now Microsoft.
Yeah, it's really interesting. They went through hell to get that deal done.
Yeah.
Crazy.
But I'll tell you what, Daddy Buffett made some good money.
Yeah, he was playing that ARB. I wonder if
believed in it.
Was he still in it?
I believe.
Yeah.
So
We could look at his last 13F or whatever it is. But anyway, wow. Okay. Anything else to add here before we go into the weekend? Check out meetkevin.com, the courses. Anything else to add? You guys want to add anything else?
Glad we had this talk.
All right, perfect. Let me throw in our classic disclaimer. Yes, I'm a licensed financial advisor. Yes, I'm a real estate broker. Yes, becoming a stockbroker. Yeah, I'm getting like 20 other freaking licenses. Just not a pilot's license. I ain't trusting myself behind the yoke.
Hey, what happens on November 1st?
Oh, House Hack. We have a real estate company that's fundraising. Good job. Read the offering circular at househack.com. You can watch the video that I made. I actually wore this jacket last in the pitch video for House Hack. So go check that out at househack.com. You do not have to be an accredited investor. You can diversify some of your investments. I think those are some of the biggest reasons we're getting people like you. Look, I've got money in my own home or my own real estate. I've got money in my own stocks. I just want to diversify to maybe a VC opportunity where I can get in at, a 1-to-1 valuation. I believe in real estate or whatever. So go check that out. Big background in real estate. But of course, as usual, none of the information in this video is personalized advice to you. We don't know you. We don't know your situation. Hopefully you can take a general perspective and advice from us as always, and wish you the best. So thank you so much for watching. And as usual, any partnerships that we mention are probably paid for, or we would make a potential profit from, like StreamYard. You had to get the coffee stain out of here, man. I don't know tuck here. Anyway, StreamYard, great streaming software. In fact, that's what we're using to stream right now. So go check them out at metkevin.com/StreamYard, part of a paid promotion. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.